or we could set up a personal Zoom if needed. That's totally do it. So Rudy's asking about a max temp for the bacteria. Yeah, Rudy, these guys can handle up to about 85 degrees Fahrenheit.
We set Mercy's tank pretty high to begin with, and it seemed like the bacteria responded much more quickly.
Yeah. Yep. It's like even with us, you know, like as your core body temperature increases, your metabolic rate increases. And so, you know, it's not surprising, but they do really well up to about 85 degrees Fahrenheit.
Rob, can you talk to the difference between the GH and the KH levels? Because my GH level in my tank drops and the KH is up around 240. And my pH is higher because I made a mistake. I added too much baking soda to raise it, and it's right around 8.59. But I have gone through the pre-cycling.
Okay.
And the bacteria is working. There's nitrates. I think
Great.
it's doing its job, but I'm just curious about the KH and pH and how to, I've done some water changes and the pH is still pretty high.
Yeah, with a KH value that high, you have very alkaline water, and so that is more difficult to deal with than having more acidic water. So bringing the pH down with some supplements can get messy really fast. Your tank cycling, I honestly wouldn't mess with that KH value.
Okay.
You know, the bacteria are going to be fine at that more alkaline pH. You know, it's when they get more acidic that these guys really shut down. And the trout eggs, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, should be fine around 8. I mean, we have a lot of hard water here in Vermont, so that should be totally fine. And it's a losing battle trying to bring that KH down. And the GH, we typically, so the GH is general hardness, so it's kind of like a bunch of the other minerals that are in your water, and they're important, you know, for bacterial growth as well as the fish. But as long as you have some GH, you're okay, and we don't worry about it too much in the trout in the classroom program, because if you're getting your water from the well or from the tap, you definitely will have some kind of general hardness of the water.
Okay.
A mistake a lot of people make is they think they want to get the cleanest water possible, so they'll get distilled water from the grocery store for their fish tank, and that has a general hardness of 0, because that's what it takes all that out. And so then there's no those micronutrients, those minerals are really important for life.
Okay. Thank you.
So yeah, I mean, it's great that you're seeing the nitrates and the bacteria are happy, and the fish eggs will be fine at that pH.
How often do you add the Dr. Tim's? Because my ammonium is really low.
Yeah, so you have nitrates, so you've established your tank's microbiota, so to speak. So you have all the good bacteria there. They're growing, they're metabolizing the ammonium chloride and the nitrite that's produced. So the trick for you now is to keep that going and feed them. So the 2 ways you can do that are you can add more Dr. Tim's. Again, not going above that 5 parts per million, but with those bacteria in there, what you're going to see is they're going to eat it really fast.
They do.
Yep. And that's good. That's why they're there. So that's awesome. Your tank is really ready to go. Over break, if you don't want to come in and do that every 2 or 3 days, you can, excuse me, you can add some fish food to the tank every 3 to 4 days, and that'll keep them fed, because that'll break down. And as that breaks down, they can use that to continue to grow and keep the cycle going. And so the trick you can do is, if you have a pet store near you or a Walmart or a Target, there's these little vacation fish food blocks, and they sell them in different sizes based on how long you're going to be on vacation. They're generally not, well, they're not great for tropical fish aquariums, to be honest, but in this particular case, they work beautifully because they're doing exactly what you want, which is accumulating some waste in the tank. Which the bacteria will grow. So if you got one for like 5 days, that would cover you over your 2-week break really easily. They're like $3. So,
Okay.
but you do need to feed them. Otherwise, at some point, it's like if you went in, you generally don't want to go more than 3 or 4 days without them having something to eat in the tank.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I have been cycling my tank since Friday, and all of the numbers look good. I have the ammonia's in there, the pH is at a 7.5. Everything else is good. Saturday I went in and I needed to put some baking soda in there, to bring whatever it was, a K up a little bit because it had dropped. But I tested it today and I still don't have any changes in there's no nitrates, no nitrates, nothing in there. How long does that usually take before you start seeing that?
Yeah, so you are detecting ammonium. Okay, but you're not seeing any nitrite or nitrate. And did you add the night out too when you started the cycling with the ammonium chloride?
Yes, I did.
So based on what you just told me on the KH, my hunch is that you had a bit of a spike in the pH initially, when you added the night out too with the ammonia. And even if you get that spike and you missed it, it would have killed those bacteria. And so the fact that you're not seeing any nitrite or nitrate tells me that that's what's happened. And so what you can do, as long as that ammonia is below that 5 parts per million, you can just add night out 2 now to your tank.
Okay.
The pH is stabilized when you added the baking soda, and it should start pretty fast from there.
Okay.
But the key things there are is make sure that pH is stable at around, somewhere between 7 and 8-ish, and then your KH is well above 100, and then the ammonium chloride is still around between, somewhere between 1 and 5 parts per million.
Yeah, the ammonia is still at 3 and has been the entire time.
Okay, good.
And
Okay, that's
yeah,
great.
and the pH every time has been 7.5 or 8 when I've checked it. Yeah, I'm just not really
And you
sure
have
what's happening.
fresh night out too?
So I had actually started the pre-cycling early and I had an old bottle.
Okay.
And so I did add additional night out, because I thought that might be the case, that the bacteria just wasn't good.
Uh-huh.
And so I opened up a new container, and added that on Saturday, and yeah. So I'm not really sure.
If you could email me all your numbers, your
Okay.
pH, your KH, your ammonia, and then the cycle, how you did it, and like what you added,
Yeah.
it'll be a lot easier for me to be like, okay, this is what you should do next. But based on what you've told me, it seems like things are kind of ready to go, and I might add another dose of the night out too,
Yeah.
to see if that kicks things off for you.
Yeah, the pH is at 7.3, the KH is at 180, and the ammonia is at 3.
Are you using the tank heater?
Yes, it's at 76 degrees.
Okay.
Should work.
Everything sounds great. It makes me a little suspicious about the night out 2 bottle. But yeah, send me your numbers, and let me think. Once I see those numbers, I can bounce a few more ideas off my head, and we can chat a little bit. That all sounds great and like it should be running.
Okay, I was having another piece to it was that I was having a filter that kept shutting off. And I'd have to reset it, and I don't know if that would have any impact on it.
Probably not. They actually, these guys actually do fine without oxygen. So it's, yeah, probably not.
I have a quick question. If we're talking about heaters, we have an 80-gallon heater. It's what it's supposed to be up to. Is that going to be sufficient? We struggled at first with some colder water, and I'm just wondering if folks have had success with a heater that small, or if they needed to get 2.
When you say 80-gallon, Pete, could you say a little more about what that metric is?
It was rated to tanks up to 80 gallon. That was the largest one.
Do you know what the wattage is?
Oh, geez. I don't have that in front of me. I can't remember.
My understanding is that the 55-gallon tanks that most of us use, not everybody, should have a heater that with a 300-watt rating. So you may want to check on that.
Will do, thanks.
Any other comments from the peanut gallery on heater ratings? Other pre-cycling reports or questions?
I have one. So I just got my tank set up today. I turned on the heater, so hopefully I can start pre-cycling tomorrow. I do go on break, but I was planning on going into my classroom to keep up with it. So I will have enough time, right, to go through that process, because I thought that the eggs weren't coming until January 10th now.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
Melissa, you definitely have plenty of time. Yep. Yeah, especially if you started tomorrow. Yeah, you definitely have plenty of time.
Okay. And then a general question is like, how, so Mercy said that she had someone come help her. How do I get someone to come help me with my tank? I have questions. I don't know who like my go-to person is.
Well, I'll try to field that. Melissa, where is your school located?
I'm in Morrisville,
So that is
Lamoille.
the Mad Dog chapter area.
Okay.
The coordinator for that area is Clark Amadon. And if you go to the website, which I can show you right here, hang on a second while I share. All right. I've got too many things up here that.
I have a couple of his addresses. I don't know if you use the GMA VT or if you use
They both work equally well. So
I can put them in the chat.
Thank you.
thank you. very
And
much.
then my last question, it doesn't really have to do with pre-cycling, so I don't need it right now, but I haven't got my chiller yet. And it's really they haven't given me a ETA on the arrival of my chiller. They got the PO, which is good, but they aren't giving me like a delivery date.
Sure. That's concerning. All of the reports I've been hearing from schools suggest that chillers that haven't been received won't be received in time to start the program.
Okay.
Where'd you order your chiller?
Through whatever it was on that supply list. I went through and ordered everything since my
Gotcha.
first year.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
just gave the list to the lady in my office who's amazing and takes care of that. And she ordered it all.
Ordinarily, that
For
would
me.
be the thing to do. Tradewind chiller.
Yes, that's what it was.
But this year, I would be doubtful if you got that in the next 2 weeks. So I think what we need to do is figure out if we have a chiller within your region or anywhere else in the state that we can relocate and get to you.
Okay.
I've done that twice for schools in our region. And I think that Clark probably has the capacity to do that for you.
Okay, so I'll just reach out to him about
Yes.
that. Okay,
Yeah. I mean,
great.
this year we have a lot of schools participating, but we're still down about 15 from our high water mark of 99 schools in 2019. So that means that across the state, there are 15 chillers that are going to be unused this year. In addition, there's a Voc Tech program somewhere in your area that has been working on reconditioning 3 chillers that were defunct. And my understanding is that they've been successful in getting them back to functioning. So that's another source that Clark can use. But why don't you reach out to him? I'll reach out to him. But the answer, I think, is going to be that we're going to get a chiller for you for this year. You'll probably have to return it next year. But for this year, you'll get a chiller to use, probably get it to you in the next few days. And hang in there with your order, because even if it comes 6 months from now, you'll still be able to use it next year after you've returned the borrowed chiller.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Melissa, I just wanted to point out that I'm just down the road from you in Wolcott. So if you ever like want to connect and talk about how it's going, since we're both in our first year, yeah, we could do that.
Awesome. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
That's a great offer. I think in any case in which the schools are close enough that you can meet each other and work together a little bit, I think that's a great practice.
I have a question.
Yes,
I
Andy,
haven't.
welcome.
Thank you. Sorry to join in a little bit late. Thanks, Chuck, for alerting me. This is my 4th year doing Trout in the Classroom, and I've never done a heater at all. So I'm just curious as to why I'm hearing people talk about heaters. That's not been my practice, just starting the chiller, just before the trout arrive.
Yeah, Sandy, so we added the heater to help with the pre-cycling for those that were pre-cycling their tanks. If you're not pre-cycling, then you don't need the heater's fine. You don't need the heater. Yeah.
So we have kind of gradually moved into a strong recommendation on recycling. The rationale behind recycling is that when you start your eggs, you'll probably have your water somewhere around 45 degrees. And at that point, the bacteria that are in your tank that come from night out 2 are really dormant. They don't grow. And then as your fish grow and start producing waste, there's no good bacteria in your filter to deal with that. And that has caused some serious problems in the early phases of the Trout in the Classroom process. And one of the ways to deal with that is to pre-cycle your tank at 75 degrees or so, grow those bacteria when the temperature of the water really fosters their growth. And then when you have to turn the temperature down to adjust to the hatchery temperature, that's okay. They won't die. They'll just kind of hibernate. And as you move the temperature back up towards 50 or 55 degrees, they'll come to life again. And that colony of bacteria will already have been established and can much more quickly begin to deal with the ammonia and the nitrite that your fish are producing. So it's our recommendation. We have had lots of people do the program without pre-cycling. It's not required, but if you can do it, if you can pull it off, and we think in order to do it, you should get yourself a heater, which costs about $25. We urge you to consider it. Well, Clark, we were just talking about you. Is that why you joined the call?
Must be.
So Melissa was just talking about the fact that she has ordered a chiller, but she has no idea of its ETA. And I was saying at this point, the likelihood of that chiller coming in time for her to start the program is somewhere pretty close to 0. And so to the extent that you have the capacity in your region, if you can relocate a chiller that would otherwise not be used this year to her school, and if that doesn't work, reach out to the rest of the area coordinators. We may be able to help you out there. I know I have at least 1 or 2 chillers that I could donate for a year.
Yeah, I'll check on that, Joe. And there's also a chance that we might get 1 or 2 repaired too, Melissa. So I should, let's see, today's, hopefully by the middle of next week, I should be able to let you know.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
So the plan was that we would use the second part of our hour to talk about water temperature. And I have a little report on that, or at least a little report that relates to that. It's been a warm early winter, as I think you all are aware. And that has complicated the problems at the Roxbury hatchery to get our eggs to develop at the optimal rate for delivery out to the schools during that second week of January, starting Monday, January 10th. Jeremy Whalen, who is the hatchery manager, mixes and matches water from 3 different sources. An amazing well, a fine spring, and the 3rd branch of the White River, which runs right by the hatchery. And normally the White River water would be the coldest of those 3 sources. Typically it would be in the mid to upper 30s in a normal December, but it's been in the 40s lately. So he has not been able to use cool enough water to retard the development of our eggs, which means that they will be a little bit more advanced in that week of January 1st than they would normally have been. He is predicting that the DI, or development index, will be approximately 48 to 50 degrees in the middle of that week, when normally it would have been more like 43 or 44 degrees. So that means that that has implications for the rate at which you get to develop your eggs. I sent out as an attachment, let me try this again, this document today. And this shows you, this is a table that shows you the rate, the amount, the constant that's added to the already existing development index for every degree day. So at 32 degrees and 0.0, a constant of 0.247 is added to the previous day's development index. And at 55 degrees, that number would be 1.728. This is a not a linear chart, but each of these constants gets added day after day after day, depending on how the temperature, where you've set your temperature. So the eggs will be coming to you, could be coming to you when they're already, in effect, 50% developed. If you look at the bottom of the chart here, you see 4 rows: weak eye, strong eye, 90% hatched, and first feeding. This is a little bit off. We were trusting these numbers for the first few years that we began to use these data. And then we discovered that actually our hatching was occurring earlier and our feeding was occurring more like at 90% development as opposed to 100%. But theoretically, at 100%, they're all feeding. And this means that your fish will be coming to you very close to being hatched. You know, this says 58%, a DI of 58, they will be hatched, or sorry, 90% of them will be hatched. In the past, we've actually found that number is more like 53 or 54% DI. So there's not going to be much time at all between when you get your eggs and when they start hatching. And that's just something to keep in mind. But the issue of temperature is something that you'll find relevant. Sorry, I thought I was switching to a different spreadsheet. Here I go again. Is that a George H.W. Bush expression? Does anybody know how to, what I'm doing wrong here?
Joe, what are you trying to do?
I'm trying to share my screen, but use a different share a different application.
So if you stop your share here and you go to share screen, you should have multiple, anything that's up on your computer should come up as being shareable, and then you click on the
Right.
one you want to share.
That's what I've done. I've done that now 4 times. So I'm clicking.
We're getting you're sharing a screen with us that says record of daily temperature and DIs.
Okay, what's interesting is that I don't see that myself.
Yeah, you might not.
Well, anyway, Chuck, you know how to use that spreadsheet. Do you want to walk people through its use?
Sure. So you can see on the screen, can everyone see the record of daily temperature and DIs it's showing there? And you can see, I can't, but maybe Joe, you can just move your cursor down to the arrival date. So on the arrival date on that right there, you'll put in the date you receive your eggs, and you will be given the DI, or that development index, by the person who's delivering your eggs. So they'll get that when they pick up the eggs from the hatchery, and they will let you know what that is. So you can go to this chart and enter that data in there. And then it will calculate for you basically what the DI index would be. And this, I think, is how this is just a record of your temperature, right, Joe? This is just
That's correct.
This is
Yep.
just you keeping track of your temperature. And it will add the proper DI off the chart he was just showing you earlier, the chart we were looking at where it had the different increments of development index. And you can then use this to track when it's likely your fish will, sounds like they're going to be hatched within a couple days of receiving them, when they will start to be looking to get fed, which is generally when the DI is around 85 or so is when we start looking.
That's what our experience has taught us. So in this case, this is what we call the fast and warm. You move the temperature from what they have been raising the eggs at the hatchery, which might be about 45 degrees. And in 3-degree increments, you move it to 54 and then take it to 55, and then you keep it at 55 for the duration. And that is pretty much as fast as you could get your eggs to develop. And somewhere in the vicinity of February 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 6th, between the time the DI is essentially 85 and when it's 93, you can expect those eggs to be ready to be, those alevin, we now call them, to be ready to be fed. Over the past, some teachers have preferred to use lower temperatures, but you have to do a simulation in this spreadsheet and see what would happen if you did that. When would they be at that swim up phase? And it could be that it's an inconvenient time for you. It's either during one of your typical week-long breaks, or it could be at a time when you yourself personally are not really able to give them a lot of your attention.
And I think, Joe, right, that we discovered that by pushing back the egg delivery date to that week of January the 10th, some classrooms chose to not have their fish swim up until after their February break.
Right.
And we determined that with this slightly later delivery date, but now also with a higher developmental index coming from the hatchery makes this even more important, is that you just can't keep the tank cold enough to delay their swim up till after February break. So if you were thinking of waiting till after February break for swim up, it probably is not going to work that well this year.
So this is a different way to look at the issue. This is where most schools that I have researched are having their winter and spring breaks in February 21 to 28 and spring April 18 to 22. If you look at when the schools that have reported to us in the past have had their fish swimming up, 50% of the fish swimming up, you can see it's in this 85 to 93 or 4 DI range. And that would be right here between January 29th. Excuse me. I have sent you an updated version of this based on the right DI. So ignore this, please. I apologize for that. I'll send it to you again at the end of our conversation here. But I think my recommendation, and Chuck, you feel free to jump in with yours, would be that you do this fast and warm method and get it up to 55 degrees by 3-degree increments as quickly as you can. Keep it there and have your fish swimming up before the winter break. This would give you about 2 or 3 weeks between the time that they're ready to be fed and the time you need to leave the school for the break. And that should be enough to get them reliably eating. Chuck, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned earlier, I don't even think you have another option other than the warm and fast option, because if you were to try to figure out how can I get my fish to swim up for when we come back from the winter break, you'd have to keep your tank around 40 to 41 degrees, which puts an awful lot of stress on your chiller, and maybe you might not even be able to keep it that cold just because of ambient room temperature and everything else. So I guess I would say just plan on doing the warm and fast for this year and having your fish ready to eat prior to your winter break.
Right, so this is the correct temperature scenario document. As you can see, I'm somewhat arbitrarily picking a date of January 11th and a DI of 49, which is based on the phone call I made to Jeremy Whalen this morning about what we can expect. And here you would see the DI hitting that target somewhere between February 1st and February 6th. The other approach involves you picking a time and seeing if a particular temperature will get your eggs developed when you want them to be developed. And that is also in the spreadsheet that we provide. One of the things I'm not able to find here is my what is this going to be? I apologize. So when last we talked about this, and you weren't all with us at the time, we showed you some web pages that have a bunch of spreadsheets embedded in them, links to spreadsheets. And Chuck, if I gave you sharing Authority, could you?
Yeah, I'm on that spreadsheet, so. um, oh, I'm still disabled.
Try it now.
Okay. So you want me to go right to the spreadsheet or to the,
Go to a website that gets you to the spreadsheet.
okay, so let's see here. I think that's here. Let's close that. So on the spreadsheet.
We're not seeing your screen yet.
Okay, let's see. I'm trying to get to that screen. I don't see it. So there's that. So let's see. Sorry, I see you, but I don't see that screen on here. Mail. Where is it?
So I've made you host, and now I have no authority. So unless
So
you
you can't.
give me back the hosting role.
Let's see here. I just had.
This is going to discourage you.
How do I give you the host back?
If you, I'm hoping that if you go to my rectangle and those three dots up in the right-hand corner, you might be able to do it there.
Okay. Make host.
Okay,
So you host again?
I believe so. Rob and Rudy, do you have any suggestions for us? So this is the Vermont Trout Unlimited State Council website. And if you see this drop-down menu in the middle here, go down to TIC resources, go to managing swim up and DI. This will give you the option of going to controlling when your fry swim up. I assume everyone can see this.
I can see it.
Yeah. So this is where you would get access to the spreadsheets. For example, by clicking on this, we would have access to this Google spreadsheet. First thing I should say is that you should download it so that you're working on this on your computer as opposed to on the Google Docs drive, in which case every change that you make would remain. Here are instructions, and then at the bottom you see the so-called temperature entry and DI record that we were looking at before. And then we have the swim up calculator. And this would give you the opportunity to, for example, say, on 110.
And I think you need to put in 2022 there, Joe, for that to work,
Oh,
right?
yes, thank you. We discovered that.
Yeah.
If you wanted, your fry to start feeding on, let's say, March 15th, 2020. And on that day, the DI were 49, that is January 10th, 2022. It would say that you would have to keep your water at 40.4 degrees in order for this to work. Most of your chillers probably can't maintain your water tank temperature at 40 degrees. Some of the chillers can, but in my experience, most of them can't. So that's an impractical scenario. If you wanted to push that date out a bit, let's say April 10th, 2022. Well, now we're talking about temperature that's even colder. So we have to go back the other way, and let's say we do February 28, 22. Well, that's more manageable. A lot of the chillers probably can maintain their tanks at 44 degrees. So this is a template that you can use to kind of play around with water temperature scenarios and see what works for you. The thing that I would add, however, is that whichever direction you choose, you need to continue to maintain this form, because you need to be able to know what the DI is on any given day when you might want to change the plan. So you might have a perfectly reasonable plan for having your fish swim up on February 28th, and then you might discover that, well, actually, you will not be around on that date. There's a professional development program opportunity that came up, or a health issue that came up. That wouldn't be a problem as long as you maintain this particular spreadsheet and know what the DI is. But if you happen to get to that point and you don't know what the DI is, well, that's a problem. So, comments from our volunteers, questions from our teachers.
I have a question. Oh,
Yes, Melissa.
that I had written down and I forgot to ask. With the insulation that goes around the tank, I did not put it on the bottom of my tank. Is that going to be an issue?
That's an interesting question that came up from one of my other schools as well. My answer to that is it depends what the surface is that your tank is on.
Cinder blocks.
Which probably are pretty insulating as long as it's not metal or stone or something. If it's wood or cinder, I don't know how much heat you're going to lose through the bottom of that.
Okay.
It's just keeping an eye on the water temperature.
Okay.
If it was metal, you'd probably tax your chiller a little bit more than it needed to be taxed.
Okay.
But like wood, I don't know, Joe, you can chime in. I would have thought that concrete would probably be okay, but.
Yeah, I mean, there are two reasons for the insulation. One is to reduce your cooling costs, and the other is to reduce condensation. Tanks can generate, when you've got a cold water tank in a 70-degree classroom, there'll be a lot of condensation generated. It will run downhill, and you may end up having, some water pooling under your tank that you've got to mop up every so often. But I don't think it's a problem if you're willing to just get a towel out there once in a while and soak it
My
up.
room is pretty cold. It's not very warm in my classroom yet anyways.
Well, that's
so,
an advantage in this instance,
Yeah.
except for when you're pre-cycling.
okay. I have the heater in right now warming up the water for the so yeah.
I
So it sounds like
apologize
you're-
for the technical problems I introduced, and I'll try to get better at this. But are there other comments or questions before we wrap up? So I think one of the things we learned tonight is that Rob Kramer is very accessible. If you have pre-cycling questions, or for that matter, water chemistry questions, he's easy to reach and he's very responsive. If you have any equipment shortcomings, reach out to your local coordinator. And I was going to do this before, but let me just squeeze this in before we run out of time here. So I apologize. The same website that we were talking about before has a contact us. It has a contact us page, and that's where you would find my email address, Clark's email address, and Rob Kramer's email address, as well as others if you needed it. So please turn to that, or send me an email if you're trying to reach one of the people that has volunteered to support this program. Again, I apologize for the many mistakes I made tonight, and hope that you got something out of this session. And I wish you a very happy holiday. And from what I can tell, everybody needs some peace and quiet and downtime, and I hope you get lots of that as well. We'll continue to be in touch by email, and don't hesitate to reach out to me or others if you have additional questions.
Thanks, Joe. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.